It's time for Politics Friday, and joining us this morning is the Minister for the South Island, James Meagher, and Wigram MP, Megan Woods. Good morning to you both. Thanks for your time.
Morning, Chris. Morning, James.
Morning, Megan and Chris.
Megan, let me start with you. The Maori Party MP who said, "This blows my mind. Indians, Asians, blacks, Pākehā campaigning to take a Māori seat from Māori." I mean, doesn't this type of language risk being seen not just as racist, but he's a racist? Megan, to you on that
Look,
first.
I think it's Willie Jackson that's been making the running on calling this out, because when you talk about who are being talked about, it's our Labour Party members who are out there helping Penny in his campaign in the last day before voting closes in the by-election. I think what we've seen is also Te Pāti Māori have also said that it's not who they're about. It doesn't help anybody. That we take great pride, actually, that all of Labour is backing Penny, that we've got all our Auckland members out, and we have members from all over the world who are members of the Labour Party, and we're proud of that.
The problem is the Maori Party is becoming a bigger problem for Labour, though, isn't it? With all this rhetoric that comes across as rather radical than reasonable. James?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, the guy's a liability even for Te Pāti Māori, and that's a big step to take. So we've obviously ruled out working with the likes of him for a long time, and I would hope that Megan and her leader would be able to step up and do the same thing. They're clearly not fit to represent anyone, let alone Māori, in Parliament, and I think that the comments from Takata have pretty much borne out in public what we all know is that he's not a very pleasant guy to work with a lot of the time, and those comments reflect that. And so I'm pretty disappointed. Megan's disappointed. Everyone's pretty disappointed about what he said. So if it was me that had said that, I think we'd be sitting here talking about my resignation, Chris, not whether or not the comments were appropriate.
Well, that's a fair comment, isn't it, Megan?
Well, I think one of the important things to point out here is Te Pāti Māori have themselves said that these comments weren't appropriate. They were silly. They're not appropriate. They don't help us at all. Our job as politicians is to bring everybody together. And James, I think we could go through a list of things that your coalition partners have said and whether you'll rule out working with them again. So I think that we are different parties. We're not afraid to call out where people we could potentially work with when they say something that isn't appropriate. And we've seen that it's Willie Jackson that's been making all the running and calling out how wrong this comment is.
The
Well,
problem
he's
with
not. He's not going to be our justice. He won't be our justice minister, but he is the justice spokesperson for them. So he might well be yours. So I
Okay,
guess
let's
that's
go
what it's
through
all
the
good.
list, James. That would be a fun game to play, but we don't have enough time.
There is concerns, though, isn't there, Megan? I mean, despite the fact that the Labour bloc is doing better in the polls, if you take the Roy Morgan poll, though, but a lot of people are concerned about that because it shows that perhaps Labour's friends will have to be not just the Greens but the Maori Party, two reasonably radicalised parties now. So
Uh,
you got
well,
friends that you
I
don't need?
Well, I don't think polling is showing that in terms of what the public are thinking. But you also need to look at the other side. I think that a lot of people see that who National is currently in government with have some pretty radical views. We've had this week one of National's coalition partners saying we should pull out of the coalition agreement. We've had crickets from the National Party about whether or not that is going to occur. The point of the matter is that we are the Labour Party. We will contest to get every vote that we can, and we'll be out there talking to voters about why they should vote for Labour. That's exactly what we're doing in the by-election. We're contesting that. We're contesting that hard, and voters will ultimately make their decision. But I think if you have a look at that Roy Morgan poll, and we're certainly not taking any poll for granted, it's our job to be out there talking to New Zealanders. We know most New Zealanders are feeling like things are getting worse, not better. They're not saying that their jobs, their health, their homes are a priority for this government, and they're getting pretty tired of it. I think we can make this a one-term national government, but we're not taking anything for granted.
Okay, James, you just finally on this before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally unrealistic from Megan because what you've seen from this government is a coalition that's working really well together and actually delivering for New Zealanders, particularly for South Islanders. I mean, you only have to look at the last couple of weeks, what we've done in terms of our investment in regional connectivity to support regional areas. You look at the investment being made up in Pages Road, the only government to allocate money to Pages Road Bridge and the redevelopment there, and also this week around Ashburton Bridge. So actually, if you're looking at a government that delivers and has a plan, this is the one to go with. And I challenge Megan and all her counterparts any day of the week to put forward what their plan actually is to take this country forward. They say they've got one. It might be on the back of Chloe Swarbrick's budget, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen it.
Now, that's a fair
Yeah.
point, Megan.
Yeah, and James, you'll probably see it at the same point of the electoral cycle that National released the years before the last election.
Now that's a fair point, though,
Ju-
Megan. I want to pick up on James, and I know we were having a brief discussion about that, but when I'm going through the Labour Party Facebook page, a lot of negativity, a lot of blaming, and all that sort of stuff, but not much policy, not much saying, well, how? I mean, I think it's accepted that people are doing it tough. You got businesses closing left, right, and centre, and so when I'm reading some of the stuff that I'm seeing, I'm like, yep, I can understand what you're saying, but I do want to know that how are you going to fix it if there is a problem?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is the job of oppositions, to not only oppose, but to propose and to put forward policies. And that's exactly the work that we're doing and have been doing for a very long period of time with our party members. And that will be released well before the election. It will be fully costed and voters will make their decisions. And this is absolutely typical of any election cycle. There is nothing different about this. But James, when you say how well the South Island is doing, I'll say 2 roads of national significance, and we're paying for one of them ourselves as a toll road. I think South Islanders know they're being left out by this government and they're not a priority.
Got to move on. Police are increasingly using commercial helicopters, as reported by me, to chase stolen cars, often driven by young offenders. You had the incident yesterday, first reported by Chris Lynch Media, or the day before rather, of a 17-year-old that nearly bowled over some students outside Shirley High School. As a result of that, you had police helicopters, a commercial helicopter called in. This is very costly. Police won't release the details of how much this costs. My problem with this is, should parents now be forced to cover the costs for these types of highly expensive operations? James, to you first.
It's an interesting proposition, and as a government, we've made a number of moves to try and make parents more responsible for the young people that they have custody of, or particularly children in their care and living in their household. And charging for things like that is an interesting move that we haven't considered at this stage. I'm always wary of the likes of myself not being from Christchurch and the issue of helicopters. I mean, there was thoughts about getting another Eagle helicopter down for Christchurch, but then we think back to the issues that people have with helicopters flying around and how that reminds them of the earthquake. It's not something that I would leap forward into using more often without good consultation with the community, but it's certainly an effective tool and a deterrent for those kids who are wreaking havoc and trying to run away from the cops.
Megan, what do you make of this? I mean, we have seen an increase, as far as I'm concerned, of police having to hire commercial helicopters, and they are so expensive. And then, of course, I mean, they help. They're a great tool for police, but they come at a high price. Who should pay?
Yeah, and it is, as James says, an interesting proposition. User pays for this is not something that
It's a
we've
Chris Lynch
considered.
private members bill. That's what it
And
is.
there you go. Get it drafted. I'll put it in the ballot for you, Chris.
Thank you.
But look, I mean, my concern that if I'm thinking about this straight away is just the practicality of it. I mean, in terms of whether or not the families would have the ability to pay, or whether this would just become another unpaid fine, and whether that actually takes us forward. I think one of the things I really want to see is actually more police on the ground as well. We're still waiting to see those 500 police that we were promised. What we're seeing here across Canterbury is actually the loss of having police in a number of stations. We're not going to have a sworn officer in Hornby, for example, under the current proposal. And I think that's something that the community feels really strongly about. Also, I know that how well our local community constables work in our neighbourhoods where my electorate office is, and seeing that team reduce is something I'm concerned about, because I think they make a real difference too.
They do, but obviously so does a helicopter.
Oh, absolutely, and I'm not disputing that. I'm just worried about how practical it actually would be to collect that money, Chris.
James, do you finally? Then we'll move on.
Well, I tend to agree with Megan on the side of the helicopter thing. I think it's worth exploring, particularly if it does do more to deter crime. But in terms of resources on the ground in Christchurch, I mean, you've seen a huge amount of additional resource in terms of cops on the beat actually having a visible presence in and around the CBD. And one of the reasons why I think the police have put their proposal out to have authorised officers be in charge of the kiosks and the stations and take people's details, is so that we can get those fully fledged sworn-in constables on the street, on the beat, having a presence in the community and doing the work that they do to deter crime. And they're a great asset to our community, and we're a government that is committed to seeing more of it. And that's why we've got those extra 500 police on the way.
Smith
Yeah, the
City has got
problem.
an.
Yeah, sorry, just on that, everyone likes seeing the more police on the beat, James. That's really good, but it is coming out of our community policing, and that is something that is of concern to a large number of communities across Christchurch, because we know how effective those community constables that know their neighbourhoods and know the people in them are. So losing them is not a good thing. I'd like to see those additional constables actually being your government fronting up with some of those extra 500, and actually seeing additionality rather than robbing Peter to pay Paul, to take them out of other places.
There's nothing worse than robbing Peter to pay for Paul.
That's
Smith
right,
City has
Chris.
gone into voluntary liquidation. All the stores have closed up shop. James, to you on this, is this a one-off collapse, or do you think we're going to start to see more of these retail failures?
I think my hope is that this is a one-off move to voluntary administration for Smiths. I mean, they've been a great South Island Canterbury business for many, many years. They had a good presence in Timaru when I was growing up, and I had family who worked through Smith City when it was then. So they've had a great run. They are obviously facing the challenge that a lot of retailers are facing, is that it's tough to do business out there. And you can see what happens when we don't have economic growth, when we don't have the ability for people to have higher jobs and or higher incomes and better jobs to be able to actually spend in our local communities. It does put pressure on those retailers. And so we as a government have to look at what are we doing when we inflate some of those costs. I mean, when you've got inflation running at record highs over the past few years, that puts pressure on businesses, and these are some of the outcomes that we're dealing with. So it is a sad time for Smiths and for the legacy of Smiths, but they are in voluntary administration, and there is a possibility that they can trade through this. So fingers crossed that we can get some good outcomes.
That's true. He did tell me, the owner of Smith City, Megan, said he was surprised that just no one's got money. He said people aren't spending. What do you say to that, and how do we get people spending again? What is your take on this, and how do we improve the outlook for people's wallets?
Yeah, first of all, my heart really goes out to those people that are losing their jobs, who are kind of worried about their employment, in terms of the future there, because I think it would be a very scary time to be out there looking for work, particularly in retail. But I think that's absolutely right. If you have a look at the receivership data, that we've seen a doubling of the number of businesses that have gone into receivership between 2021 and 2024. That people are doing it tough, and it's also about how people are feeling. They're feeling things are getting worse, not better. They're
So
seeing.
if that's the case, how do
that
we get people to feel better? What's one? Give me one solution.
Well, one of the things that we are seeing is unemployment, Chris, and I think that's always one of the things. And even if you haven't lost your job, the fear that you might, that actually wreaks havoc on people's confidence and how they're feeling, because you take away your income and you're in a very tight spot. So one of the things that we know that we've seen is a massive downturn in construction. So one very simple thing we could have done is actually kept going with our state house build. That we've seen the number of jobs that we've lost in the construction sector, and all the flow on that has through a whole number of trades. And of course, Smith City, that when people are building, they're buying those appliances to put into those houses. So all these things do have a flow on effect.
But there's so much construction going on. There's so many subdivisions starting up right across Greater Canterbury. James, to you on that, just quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth putting out there that the Kāinga Ora portion of residential construction is in single digits in terms of percentage. You do have a huge amount of construction activity, not just in Christchurch, Ralston, Lincoln, but also in Queenstown as well. So much so that, we had, I think we had Jenny Anderson a while ago complaining that there's not enough builders to keep up with the demand. So there is a significant amount of work going out there. The problem is, I think, is that there aren't any solutions being offered by Megan and her team. At least we have done things like investment boost to put an instant 20% depreciation on new capital equipment and expenditure, and that's going to be great for tradies. We've coming into government got rid of the what they called fair wage agreements or fair pay or whatever they were, where essentially they were going to apply Auckland conditions to a Christchurch scenario. We got away with that because that was putting huge pressure on businesses. It's all well and good to try and point out where you see the holes are, but still I don't see any solutions coming from the other side, and at least we are offering what we think will get us ahead.
Just finally, I know we're almost out of time. Megan's got to run, but the Roy Morgan poll, it does show Labour, the Greens and Te Pāti Māori now ahead of the current coalition. Megan, to you, what do you make of that? Is it a sign of better times for your bloc?
Yeah, well, it's not the only poll, I think would be the point that I'd make, that we're seeing across a number of polls that we are seeing that trend. Just on the investment boost, though, James, don't know if you saw the data that came out from Kiwi Bank about the incredibly low uptake that there has been across that, and most of it has been around investment that was going to happen. I mean, that's 1% over 20 years. And to hear you say that actually ways of keeping wages down is a way to put confidence back into people to go out and spend, I wouldn't think that's a particularly good way. And I think probably reflective of why we are seeing this trend across the polls. People's lives are getting harder. They're not getting better. They're struggling more. And we know that we've got a lot of work to do ahead of the election next year. We're not taking anything for granted. But I think actually listening to people and understanding their reality and not see cutting wages as the way through this is probably explain some of the numbers we're seeing in those polls.
James, finally to you, I mean, how much of a warning of this, and everybody reads the polls, including the politicians, so don't give me the only poll that matters is the one on election day, but how much of a warning is this in terms of a sign for the government, considering the Roy Morgan poll got things pretty accurate last time round?
Well, Megan makes a good point that every government needs to be listening to those who are actually operating on the ground. And that's why, for example, when it comes to investment boosts, we don't listen to everything that Kiwibank has to say. We actually go to those businesses who are utilising it, particularly those down in Ralston and close to the area that Megan lives, where one of the businesses is now going to be looking at investing $70 million into new plant and equipment down in the Ralston logistics hub area. Those are the tangible outcomes that come from policy. So when we talk about listening to stats and figures and statistics, sometimes the best thing to do is to go and visit the businesses, ask them how those policies are benefiting them, and get the real truth from the ground. I think that's a great way of engaging, and that's what we'll do over the next 12 months as we head into the election.
We're out of time. James Megger and Megan Woods, thank you so much for your time this morning. Have a lovely weekend.
You too. Thank you.